How are you feeling? How long have you been here?
3 months, May 17th.
And what brought you?
That's difficult to answer.
Which give you some idea.
I am not completely like other people.
What do you mean by that?
People dislike me because I am not completely like them. I am trying to do with my life something which few people try to do, and this influences my thinking and consequently my action.
What is it you're trying to do with your life?
Play the piano for people.
I'm not clear. How is it that playing the piano for people has eventually resulted in your being here in the hospital?
That's difficult to answer.
the end? There's a noise inside my head of crying people facing death. Is this the end? Is this the end? I'm burning in the stone. There's no place to hide. I'm burning in the stone. This is the final season. What have we done to the world? What have we done to the world? I'm burning in the stone. There's no place to hide. I'm burning in the stone. This is the final
What up, everyone? Welcome to The Cult, the official 5 p.m. stream that's starting a little bit late, but it's not my fault this time. It's really not my fault. We were watching Lauren Southern testify in front of Canadian Parliament up until about, I don't know, like 15 minutes ago, so this is one of those rare moments where I was actually not late. I was early. It was the Canadian Parliament that was late. An hour late. It's not my fault, okay? We got here. But we're going to do a little bit of a lighter stream today. We've been doing some heavy communist content the last 2 days. Yesterday we did a communist double feature. And so now we're going to take it back and be a little bit lighter. And we're going to be watching today. What are we going to be watching? By special request of our dear friend, Honest Dog Allison. Honest Dog Allison asked that I take a look at this guy named Forward Observer. I have never heard of Forward Observer. I don't, and it's no shade, I don't watch other people's content on the internet. With the exception of Nick Fuentes, I very rarely watch other people's content on the internet. Even with Nick, it's like touch and go. And it's no shade on Nick, I just don't have time. Like, I don't have time. And so when my audience asks me to watch other people's content, my first thought is every time I'm asked to watch other people's content, this goes horribly, horribly, horribly wrong. Every time. Because I spend the vast majority of my time watching the radical revolutionary far left in America. I have watched thousands of hours of radical revolutionary far leftist, socialist, and communist trainings. I've gone undercover at their events. I find content that these people do on the internet that no one even knows about. I know the revolutionary far left in America inside and out. I know they're activists by name. I can recite the organizations they work for. I know what they believe. I know if they're Leninists. I know if they're Stalinists. I know if they are queer Marxists. I know if they're abolish. I know I can do this stuff without even trying that hard because I have gotten that obsessed with it over the last several years. And I've created more anti-communist content than anyone on the internet. I have gone undercover multiple times at their events. I've been around them in person. I've talked to them in person. The moral of the story is I know my shit when it comes to the far left. I know my shit. And whether or not we should do a collab remains to be seen. Now listen, I don't know who you are, Victory Garden. I don't recognize you in my chat. You might be new. But I'm gonna tell you, listen, I call balls and strikes. I will give everyone a fair shake. If this guy knows what he's talking about when it comes to the radical revolutionary far left, I will say so. If I think he's smart, if I think he's saying the right things, if I think he's doing a good job, if I think he's actually analyzing the situation correctly, I will absolutely say so. If I do not feel as though he's getting it correct, I will say that too. Because there are a lot of pretenders on the internet. And listen, man, listen. I don't criticize people just to criticize them. I would love for there to be more people doing analysis on the far left. That is the God's honest truth. When people are doing a good job doing analysis on the far left, you will hear nothing but praise from me. I love Andy Ngo's work. I think Andy Ngo does a good job. I think Andy Ngo is a little bit too beholden to political organizations and doesn't always say what he thinks publicly. But on the whole, I think Andy Ngo's work on Antifa is incomparable. I think Stu Studio, who I disagree with on some things, but Stu Studio does excellent work covering the far left. I think Trevor Loudon, even though I absolutely disagree with Trevor Loudon that Kamala Harris is a communist, I think only retards think Kamala Harris is a communist, and it quite frankly broke my heart to see Trevor Loudon go down that road, because otherwise I do actually think Trevor Loudon does pretty good work, okay? There is no one that's happier than me when I find people on the internet that are accurately analyzing the far left. However, most people who I listen to talk about the far left on the internet have no idea what they're talking about. And this is particularly true of people who pander to conservative audiences. And what I find with people who, and the impression that I get with this guy is he's pandering to a conservative audience. Most of the time when people are pandering to conservative audiences, all they're doing is speaking conservative talking points. Conservative talking points on the far left are not hinged into reality with what the far left is. The far left is way worse than most conservatives say it is. It's significantly worse. But sadly, most conservatives have no fucking idea because they don't actually understand the far left, because their influencers lie to them, because their influencers also don't understand the far left. And so when I come across stuff like this, when I get presented with people, and you know why I'm especially suspicious of this guy? And again, I'll call balls and strikes. If he knows what he's talking about, he knows what he's talking about, and that's a good thing. But do you know why I'm especially suspicious of this guy? Because he's got this built-out sales funnel. And what this is, guys, is a sales funnel. I know what a fucking sales funnel looks like. I used to make these for my businesses. I know exactly what this is. He has got a built-out sales funnel in which he's charging $200 for access to some Antifa library. Now, more power to him if he actually has an Antifa library, but why the ever-loving fuck is he charging $200 for it? Like, that to me screams grifter. And then when I come down here and I'm looking at his team, I'm looking at these people have never gone undercover with the far left. I'll tell you all that right now. I don't care if they were in the military. I don't give a fuck. These people have never gone undercover with the far left. I have gone undercover with the far left. I've gone undercover with the far left for multiple days at a time. I put myself in a room with 400 Antifa fucking far left radicals over a year ago at the Socialism Conference in 2023 for 3 straight days. I've had to wear disguises. I've had to wear chest binders. I've had to go by fake names. And I promise you, I know these people. If any of these men showed up at one of their events, they would get sniffed out immediately. And they would be shown the door. I can tell just by looking at them. They're all ex-military. Guess what ex-military are going to have a hard time doing? Going undercover with the far left. So how much could they really know is my question. How much could they really have access to? Yeah, and this is another thing. You can get all my work for about $10 a month or $20 if you're subscribed to more than one of my things. Like $200. I almost paid for it. Like I even said to my community on Monday when Honest Dog was telling me about this, I was like, I'm just going to pay for this thing and just see what he has. But I'm not paying $200 fucking dollars. Are you serious? Most of this stuff is available for free on the internet. Why on earth would I? And that's the other thing too, guys. Antifa documentation is not, you don't have to pay for it. It's freely available on the internet. You go to the Anarchist Library, you go to any of the Anarchist websites, you go to the Zine Archivist websites, you go to their Twitter account, you go to their Instagram pages, you go to their personal websites. They have this stuff freely available. They have it freely available. So why is he charging $200 for access to some Antifa library that probably has stuff that I could find on the internet for free? And if he really cares about educating people about the far left, why is he charging for this information at all? Is his work not good enough to stand on its own? Is his work not good enough that people would just fund it because they find it valuable? Because I'll tell you what, the vast majority of my content is free. And I've played a little bit with sometimes putting some things behind a paywall and sometimes making some things free. And I do have a premium option with my next book where you can get access to my chapters in my next book before it gets published as a book. That's a premium option. But the fact of the matter, but that's even only $10 a month. That's not even as expensive as what this guy is doing. If his work can't stand on his own, if he has to charge you $200 to get access to some secret Antifa library, probably that his own viewers don't know is freely available on the internet, I have questions. I have questions. And so we're going to watch this video. And I'm going to analyze this video. And for people who are here, who might be new, who are fans of his, I promise you I will give him a fair shake. I really, really will. If he knows what he's talking about, I'm going to say it. If he knows what he's talking about, my audience will say it because we're straight fucking shooters. All right? But if he doesn't know what he's talking about, then we're going to say that too. And we're not doing it to be mean. We're not doing it to drag people down. We're doing it because we believe that real people deserve access to real information. The far left is an actual problem. They are actually winning. And they're only going to get stronger under Trump. And people deserve to be told the truth. Every single thing I say and every single thing I do comes from having thousands of hours of primary source content from the far left available that you can find publicly on this channel. I don't hide it behind a paywall. I don't do that. You can find literally thousands of hours of far left training on my channel for free. You can find breakdowns of what the far left is doing on my Substack. Oh yeah? Here's a little warning to people who are new. We don't do this shit here. We don't do this shit. I have 2 rules in my chat for everyone who's new. Number 1, don't be a dick. You will not insult me. You will not insult other people in the chat. We create a nice environment for people to be in. You are in my house. You are in my classroom right now. I am the teacher of the class. You are the student in the class. You are on my private property. I am the fascist dictator of my own fucking channel. I can say and do whatever I want. But when you're in my house, you will treat me with respect and you will treat everyone else in the chat with respect. And if you don't, you can get the fuck out and no one's going to cry about it. Number 2, no whining. I don't want to hear about it. I don't care if you don't like my tone. I don't care if you think I'm mean. I don't care if you think I'm a bitch. Go cry to your mommy. No one cares here. And guess what? I care about your feelings a hell of a lot more than the far left does. So no more of this shit. No. You do not insult me. You do not insult other people in the audience. If you do it again, you're going to be permanently banned. And that's going to be the way it is. I don't charge $200 for access to the information on my Substack. I have a full podcast where we have all sorts of clips and episodes talking about the far left. I have the Woke 101 series that breaks down the far left in plain English. I have the Woke Mind series that talks about the psychology of the woke left. I've got the How to Speak Socialist training, which if you go to How to Speak Socialist on carlin.substack.com, click the very first link that comes up. This is a 4-hour crash course that walks you through dozens and dozens and dozens of clips from far left trainings so that you can find out what the far left actually thinks and what they believe in their own words. This is all free, guys. It's a 4-hour training available for free. You can watch it anytime over on the Substack. You can actually watch it on my YouTube channel too. The videos are on the YouTube channel as well. I don't charge for this shit. You want to know why? Because people pay me money when they find value in my work, and I'm very, very blessed to have a large community of people that does find value in my work and does see fit to support the work I'm doing. So I have questions about anyone that's hiding all their information behind a paywall for $200, stuff that I know damn well is available for free. All right? So we're going to go through his video, and we're going to talk about his video. And that's what we're going to do today. But guys, if you appreciate the work I'm doing, head over to the Substack. You can sign up for $8 a month, $80 a year. If you want other ways to support the work I'm doing, you can head over to this article right here, How to Support Journalism and Education, Exposing the Far Left. Someone's already getting put in timeout, isn't he? Here are some ways you can support my work. Of course, becoming a paid member. We already just talked about that. You can make a one-time gift of any amount through Stripe if you feel like doing so. You can head over to the Unwoke Art Store, which is my merchandise store. Get the best anti-communist merch on the internet. We're going to have some Christmas sales coming up next week for Black Friday. It's going to be great. We're going to be doing Christmas sales up until a couple weeks before Christmas, so there's going to be lots of stuff going on there. You can help fund my next book by going to speaksocialist.substack.com, getting access to chapters of my book before it actually becomes a book. I'm writing a book about decoding the language of the far left. You can access that now. You can, of course, watch me on my daily live streams Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time on YouTube, on X, on Rumble. Not on X right now because my account's locked, but I'll be back on X tomorrow. You can also come to Socialism Saturdays at 6 p.m., where we do deep dives into the radical revolutionary far left. I show you the most dystopian shit on the internet. And of course, you can follow me on social media. You can follow me on Twitter. You can also follow the Telegram channel. Let me just pop the link into the chat right now. If you want access to that, that'll walk you through all the different ways you can support my work. And of course, the best way that you can support my work is by sharing it out with your friends and family, because if there's anything I know, conservative influencers are not going to save us. Donald Trump is not going to save us. The radical revolutionary far left is going to make more progress during Trump's presidency than they did during Biden's presidency. And so if we want someone to save us, we're going to have to save ourselves, all right? So make sure you're sharing the content out, making sure you're utilizing the resources I've created for you. I have tons of articles. I have tons of clips. I have all the things you guys need to educate your friends and family. Show up to the streams, learn as much as you can, and then help teach as many people as possible. That is how we create a grassroots movement to fight back in this country, and those are the ways that you can support the work I'm doing. You can find that full list over on my Substack, carlin.substack.com, and I really do appreciate everyone who takes the time out to support my work financially, or shares the information, or gets involved amplifying it on Twitter, or any of the things that you guys do. I really can't do it without you. Thank you so much for allowing me to do this. I really do appreciate it. Without further ado, let's jump right in. And as a reminder, guys, we're still working on that super chat goal from the last show. We are 35% of our way to our super chat goal. If you feel so inclined, help me reach my $100 super chat goal for the day. $5 from 20 people helps me hit that goal, and that helps fund the streaming I do. It's a pretty modest amount, to be honest with you, but it does really help out when I'm spending so many hours streaming, and I really do appreciate it. And please mount the like button for me. Let's get this party started. Let's see what this guy knows.
Hello and good evening, everyone. So we'll go ahead and get started. Everyone, thanks so much for being here. Tonight, we are going to break down some color revolutions and look at why elements of the left and the far left are planning a color revolution against the incoming Trump administration. As a matter of fact, there's one strategy call that is happening right now. One of our teammates from Early Warning Network is sitting through that call right now.
Which one?
And we will have notes for Early Warning Network subscribers.
Okay, so that's already okay. There are strategy calls happening all the time on the far left. Strategy calls on the far left are nothing new. They do organizing calls all the time. It is absolutely true there are a lot of organizing calls happening right now on the far left. We've infiltrated a bunch of them, but the fact that, again, this is another red flag for me. The fact that he's saying, guys, we're infiltrating leftist strategy calls right now, and those notes will be available to my members. Listen, I do live infiltrations of those calls. And I invite my supporters to come and do those live infiltrations with me. But do you know what I do after those live infiltrations? I make clips publicly available so that people know what's being said on the call. I don't just hide the notes behind my paywall. We do the infiltrations live as a supporter exclusive because that helps cut down on error, that helps cut down on the amount of times that I get kicked out of those calls, that helps get cut down on a lot of problems that were created when we were doing them publicly, although sometimes I do them publicly too. But the most important thing is that I take the most important pieces of information that come out of those calls and I make them publicly available. I don't hide it behind a $200 paywall, because if you're serious about defeating the left, it doesn't come with pay me first, bro, and then we can talk about it later. I am very lucky that people fund the work I'm doing, but I think that people fund work that they find valuable. And what I have found consistently is that when you go out and you deliver good information to your audience about what's going on, the audience thanks you with that, with things like super chats. Thank you, Brucey. It's nice to see you. I really do appreciate it. Or super stickers like from Honest Dog Allison. I don't have to put everything behind a paywall for that to happen. Thank you, guys.
Oh, we'll have notes for members in tomorrow's report. And then there's another one on Friday night that I'll be sitting through. And notes on that will be in our Monday's early warning report. My name is Mike Shelby. I'm a former intelligence analyst. I got out of the Army as a sergeant, which is a non-commissioned officer, or NCO. Later, I got into intelligence contracting, but both as a soldier and then later as a contractor.
FO primary focus is national and international events. Then he's not an expert on the far left. A daily YouTube briefing, the information on his site. Well, it's not on his site. It's behind a paywall. Certainly a funnel, $200 a year subscriptions. Yeah, he shouldn't be charging that much money for this. Mike Shelby is the primary on the left. I have no idea what that means, but if you're telling me that he's hiding all his information behind a paywall, I have questions.
Was deployed to Iraq or Afghanistan part of every year from 2006 to 2011. So just over 3 years of total deployment time there. And my primary experience was in human intelligence and then as a contractor, biometric targeting. But I'll tell you, I am really fascinated by what's called low intensity conflict. And that has been my main area of interest really since 2016. That's when I started tracking far left movements like Antifa. Back in 2016, I started attending their events and going to their demonstrations.
Yeah, this is already the question that I have. Why should I trust this guy? Is this guy putting out real information? Or is this guy putting out information that's convenient for the feds to have out there? It's going to be my primary question.
Black bloc demonstrations around the country. I have a lot of firsthand knowledge about the far left.
This guy would get sniffed out.
All these various groups and movements. And
I'm sorry, he would get sniffed
really
out
because of my intelligence background, just a very unique understanding of that threat. You know,
we'll
you
see.
think I spent so much time in Iraq and Afghanistan, and even CONUS time, even not being deployed. We were looking at insurgencies. We were looking at insurgent groups. And one thing I found is that a lot of these far left groups, they're cell-based, just like an insurgency.
That's true.
So there's a lot of crossover here.
They are cell-based.
And that's another thing that is pretty fascinating to me. So at any rate, today, I am a low-intensity conflict analyst here at the Early Warning Network, and we will get into that momentarily. In the next roughly 45 minutes or so, you're going to learn about color revolutions, some of the things I expect to see over the next 4 years here in the United States, some things that I believe the far left is going to do.
If this guy
and in many
says
cases
Mao,
going to
so help
attempt
him.
again, starting really from yesterday and going through 2028. Now, a color revolution is a unique type of conflict that would be classified as a form of irregular warfare. And it's also referred to as low intensity conflict. That's what I still call it. But it is a form of actual warfare, and it is every bit as much a revolution as any other kind of revolution.
I don't give a flying fuck how long they've been around. How
what
long
makes
have they
color
been lying to
revolutions
people?
unique is that it is predominantly nonviolent. They're almost always large-scale protest movements. In the
Has this guy not figured out yet that the goal of the far left is the violent overthrow of the U.S. government? he is correct in that there's mostly going to be non-violence with a little bit of exception. There are going to be violent skirmishes leading up to whenever they decide to start their revolution eventually. But has this guy not figured out yet that the goal of the far left is the violent overthrow of the U.S. government? Does he just think that this is all about protest? Does he not understand the end goal?
The way they win is by exploiting weaknesses and vulnerabilities within an existing societal, and especially within an existing government system. And I'll talk a lot more about the strategies and tactics later on. But the last point here is that color revolutions use a specific color to represent their ideals of freedom and solidarity.
Here we go.
Ultimately, ideally, this is a peaceful mass mobilization that often achieves victory over the course of weeks or months.
No.
We're not talking about long, dragged out, very destructive armed conflicts here that are drawn out over the course of...
The far left has been doing this for 100 years. This is not weeks and months. The far left has been doing this for about 100 years. They have been building up the destabilization effort in America since about 2009, which is when the long march through the institutions ended, and which is when they shifted gears specifically to focusing on destabilizing the American system through protests, through violent conflict, through stuff like that. So again, it's like he's already making very basic mistakes in his analysis of the far left. If he thinks this has just been weeks or months, or that this has just popped up out of nowhere, we'll see.
Of years. These things typically take months, sometimes weeks.
No.
Yeah, no. Fiery, but mostly peaceful. Listen, there's some really good reasons why people engaged in a color revolution do not want to use violence.
Why hasn't he defined color revolution
We'll talk about that a little bit later on. And to many of you, this may seem counterintuitive, because how is it that unarmed protesters can defeat a standing government that's protected by...
Unarmed protesters. Look on the screen. How can unarmed protesters defeat a standing government? Pop quiz from my chat. Is the far left unarmed? Is the far left unarmed, guys? Is the far left unarmed? Because I'm old enough to remember watching specific presentations where they were talking about arming themselves, specific presentations about talking about firearms trainings. They've got legitimate gun clubs. No, they're not unarmed. They have their own fucking militias. They're not unarmed. Why did he just say they were unarmed? They have arms. They know how to use arms. Big nope. Wrong. Nope. 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 Nope.
By military and its intelligence services and the secret police and security forces. Well, nonviolent revolutions, including color revolutions, are a lot more common than the average person would actually think. Here's an incomplete list of where color revolutions or revolutions, both of which are predominantly nonviolent, have been successful. It's a long list. We don't have time to go into all of them. But color revolutions are a form of low intensity conflict, and that exists in the gray area between outright war and outright peace. So it exists beneath the threshold of conventional war. So we're not talking about tanks and bombers. Okay. That's high intensity conflict like World War II or the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine. But it exists above the threshold of routine peaceful competition. So it's often been said, America, we're not really at war with each other, at least not yet, but we're definitely not at peace with each other. And this is the gray space. This is the gray area between war and peace. And a lot of this goes back to how the left and the right see conflict or see war.
How do you think the left sees
Someone
conflict?
once said that the right views war or violence or conflict as a switch. It's either all the way on or it's all the way off. But the left sees conflict as a dial that can be turned up and turned back down and then turned back up as the situation warrants.
Nope. Wrong. The left believes they are in a perpetual revolution. They believe they are in a perpetual struggle. There is no dial that turns up or down. The revolution is constant. The revolution never stops. The revolution is always ongoing. They are always at 10 or 11. They never stop. Just because you don't see protests in the street every day doesn't mean they've stopped. Just because, and by the way, they do protest almost every single day. It's just whether or not the news media covers it or some independent journalist happens to get footage of it. The left is out there doing stuff all the flipping time. And most of the time, by the way, the right doesn't actually report on it. So no, this is not something where they're dialing up or down. The revolution is perpetual. The revolution never stops. That's why they call it the struggle. That's why they say do the work.
And that's something that's very unique. It also makes combating it a lot more difficult.
It doesn't actually.
So it is, color revolutions are a form of low intensity
People
conflict.
not knowing what they're
By the way,
talking about
that
makes it more difficult.
Low intensity conflict is really an umbrella term because that includes everything from violent social movements to terrorism, to guerrilla movements, popular revolutions, color revolutions, up to and including insurgency. So all of those types of warfare are low intensity conflict. It exists beneath the threshold of conventional war. That's the most important thing. So when we talk about color revolutions, and specifically this manual, which is entitled From Dictatorship to Democracy, everyone, I sent out a link. If you don't have it yet, I'm going to send a link after this, and I'll include a link where you can download it. I'll send an email out. When we're talking about color revolutions here, we're really talking about how to topple dictatorial regimes, how to topple dictators. And that's what this book is all about. I can acknowledge that Trump was obviously not a dictator. We live in a federal system. It would be very difficult, if not impossible, for Trump to actually become a dictator. There are too many powerful people and too many powerful institutions that would oppose him. And I want to say I can understand where these people are coming from. I get their fear. It's not one of my fears. There's a lot of talk about it. I just don't see Trump.
Why is he? What are this guy's politics? Why is he basically trying to convince people that Trump's not going to become a dictator? I fucking want Trump to be a dictator, by the way. I think that would be great. But why is this guy going, guys, I just don't think that Trump is going to become a dictator, guys. Why is this even a line of thought that's being brought up?
Being successfully becoming a dictator, I think he would be stopped if he tried pretty shortly. Because no one is going to give him unchecked power. And we live in a federal system. If that does happen, we still have the states. Will he do things the far left dislikes and finds intolerable?
No, he won't.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope he does.
No, he won't.
But extreme dislike does not make someone a dictator. And this manual is really written about how to take down dictators. But
if this guy says that the far left are Democrats and progressives and liberals, I'm going to lose my shit.
The principles contained in this manual also apply.
No one is unbiased. No one is unbiased. You can call balls and strikes, but to have any notion that he is unbiased is ridiculous. When he is selling a $200 Antifa library, don't tell me he's impartial towards Antifa. That's retarded, bro.
Apply to taking down politicians or opposing a government that you dislike. That's the bleed over there. And this is the hurdle that I think the far left really has to overcome.
Who is the far left?
Number one, they have to start creating popular dissatisfaction against a Trump president.
No.
A Trump presidency.
No, wrong. He just said that the far left has to create popular dissatisfaction against a Trump presidency. Completely wrong. That completely misunderstands what the far left is doing. Pop quiz for my chat, because you're not going to hear it from me. You're going to hear it from my chat. What is the far left actually creating dissatisfaction in? Does the far left need to create a dissatisfaction in the Trump presidency, or do they need to create dissatisfaction in something else? What is the far left actually creating dissatisfaction in? That's a question for my chat. We're going to see them answer it, so you don't hear it from me. You hear it from people who watch the far left with me all the time. The far left isn't interested in creating a dissatisfaction with the Trump presidency. They want to create a dissatisfaction in capitalism. Capitalism, 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 capitalism. Capitalism, capitalism. Colonialism means capitalism. No. I need you to define capitalism for me, Victory Garden, because there ain't no such thing as status quo capitalism. That's not a thing on the far left. That doesn't even exist. This is a question only for Victory Garden, because he seems to be a fan of his. Victory Garden, what do you think the definition of capitalism is that the far left uses? You can go ahead and let me know in the chat. The far left is trying to create dissatisfaction with capitalism, capitalist system, capitalism. They need to make dissatisfaction for the current capitalist system in America. Capitalism. They are attacking the capitalist system so they can attack it and blame it for everything wrong and blame everything that goes wrong on capitalism. That's exactly right. The 4 goals of the woke left are always and forever the same. Gain as much power as possible, destabilize the system, attack capitalism, usher in their Marxist utopia. Now, Victory Garden has accurately said that the definition of capitalism is private property ownership. Victory Garden, how does the far left define private property? What does that mean? How does the far left specifically define private property? There is a black and white answer to this. It is right or wrong. There is no nuance. The definitions are very specific. This is across groups. What do they mean when they say private property? Explain that to us. Going back to the 4 goals of the woke left while we're waiting for Victory Garden to explain. The goals of the woke left are always and forever the same. They're always doing one or more of these things. First, they have to gain as much power as possible. They gain power by getting into positions within institutions that give them the power to make decisions. They use those positions of power and institutions to make decisions that fundamentally destabilize the system. Destabilization means they cause problems. They cause problems that cause pain for normal people. When they cause problems that cause pain for normal people, they say, you know who's to blame for all this pain that you're having right now? Capitalism is to blame. Capitalism creates all the problems in society. There's not a single problem that's been created that's not the result of capitalism. Capitalism being defined as private property ownership. We're waiting for Victory Garden to let us know specifically what they mean when they say by private property. And then once people are dissatisfied with capitalism, because capitalism now created all these problems in their life, they go, how about we do Marxism? And that's when we get the violent overthrow of the U.S. government, which, by the way, the U.S. government is considered to be the capitalist U.S. government by the far left. Nope, wrong! Wrong. And therein lies the problem, Victory Garden. Therein lies the problem. No, they do not have personal, private, and public property. No, wrong. Completely wrong. When the left says private property ownership, what they mean is your ability to own a home, your ability to own land, your ability to own an apartment rental that you rent out as a landlord, your intellectual property, your ability to own a private business, whether that private business is big or small, your parental rights over your children are considered to be a form of private property, your individual liberties are considered to be a form of private property. This is what they call bourgeois property. Bourgeois property is anything that can be used to generate personal private wealth. What you're buying into, which you never buy into at all, is this distinction that they try to say, well, we don't want your personal property. We just want we just want to take the bourgeois property. We don't mean your personal property. When they're doing that, they're trying to trick you into believing that they're not going to take your private property when they are going to take it. So we never buy into that distinction, because when they say personal property, they mean things like your house or your computer or your phone or your books or your cat or your dog. They mean things. I don't give a flying fuck if you believe them or not. The point is to understand them. That is the point. And you have already proven to us that you do not understand them. So I'm going to tell you this. I'm going to tell you this clearly. Either you are here to learn or you can get the fuck out. Because right now, you do not understand what you are talking about. This is the problem with people like this. This is the problem when people go on the internet pretending to be an expert in the left, trying to teach people about the left, and then they generate audience members like you who think you fucking understand everything and you understand nothing. You didn't understand what they mean by the term capitalism. Your definition was completely wrong. The reason you didn't understand what they mean by capitalism is because you listen to this guy, and I promise you, this guy also doesn't understand what they mean by capitalism. I promise you don't even know what the definition of bourgeois property is. In fact, I'm going to ask you right now. I'm going to put you on the spot again. What is the definition of bourgeois property? Go. This is only for Victory Garden. What is the definition of bourgeois property? You know everything, bro. You're just telling us. I realize they're going to steal all this shit. Okay, define bourgeois property. What is it? Nope, I didn't. No, wrong. Completely incorrect. Define bourgeois property, go. The next thing that comes out of your mouth will either be a definition of the term bourgeois property or you're going to get permanently banned. Go. Or you can say, I don't know. This is how we do things on my channel. Oh, there it is! There it is! There it is! You're a cluster B narcissist. I don't know the definition of bourgeois property because you're a cluster B narcissist. Now that Victory Garden has been permanently banned in my chat, I would like my chat to define bourgeois property for me. Go. Isn't it always so easy to sniff them out? Isn't it always so easy to know exactly who these assholes are and exactly how much they don't know? Definition of bourgeois property in the chat, guys. Please go. Every time. Every fucking time. When the left says private property ownership, what they're referencing is bourgeois property. That means property that you can use to generate personal private wealth. Anything that you can use to generate personal private wealth, like your ability to own a home, own land, own businesses, own IP, anything you can use to generate personal private wealth. Parental rights are considered to be a form of private property because it allows you to pass generational wealth from parent to child. It also has to do with community care and universal health care and all that sort of stuff too. There's a lot of nuance to parental rights that we can talk about another day, but for our purposes here, you have to know that they don't like passing of generational wealth because that contains private wealth within the nuclear family, which is one of the reasons they want to destroy it. Bourgeois property is private property that can be used to generate personal wealth. When the left says they want to abolish capitalism, what they mean is private property ownership of bourgeois property because they do not want any individual or any family, because they don't want families to exist, to have access to personal private wealth. Does everyone understand? Bro, you are a fucking retard if you think the left are acting like toddlers. The right are acting like toddlers. The fucking conservative right are far more toddlers than the left. Sit your ass down and learn something or get the fuck out. Does everyone understand? If you guys have questions, if new people here have questions, I don't mind taking questions. What I will not put up with is people pretending they know everything in my chat when they do not know anything, and then acting like an unhinged retard and insulting me when they don't know an answer to a question. But people are always welcome to ask questions. I always want to encourage people. I will never yell at you. I will never try to embarrass you if you are asking a legitimate question. But what just happened with that Victory Garden guy is he wasn't asking legitimate questions. He was here because he thought he knew everything. And then when he found out really quickly that he didn't know everything, he insulted me by calling me a narcissist because he was pissed off that he was getting told off by a woman, probably because he has a teeny tiny little penis and can't handle that. But that's not allowed. And I can sniff out that shit like a dog can sniff out a bone. But if you have questions, you can ask questions. We're only 8 minutes into this video.
Which is going to be very difficult to do, seeing as how the man won the Electoral College and the popular vote. But that's really their chief task if they're going to follow this playbook, which I think they will, because
they're
you
not
read through
following
it
this
and
playbook
read
at
this
all.
stuff and you're like,
they're not following this playbook at all.
This was going on in
Wrong.
2016, 2017, 18, 19,
It's
20.
going on way before that, bro. Way
So
before
to
that.
create popular dissatisfaction, what they really have to do is create a desire to oppose a Trump administration and then a desire to see him removed from office. And I think there's actually two ways that they could.
He thinks the far left wants Trump removed from office. The far left is fucking thrilled that Trump got elected. What are you talking about? One in my chat, if the far left wants Trump removed from office. Two in the chat, if the far left is going to use Trump to radicalize more far leftists than they ever dare dreamed under Joe Biden. One in the chat if you agree with this guy that the far left wants Trump removed from office. Two in the chat if the far left is going to use Trump to radicalize as many disaffected Democrats and liberals and progressives as possible, because Democrats and liberals and progressives are not the far left. Let's see what people say. Two. They are using Trump's victory to recruit. Two. They sure as shit didn't vote for Kamala Harris, I'll tell you that. Two. Not a single one in the chat. Two. The commie left is thrilled because they see Trump's victory as an opportunity to radicalize and recruit more people. They don't want Trump to get removed from office. They want Trump to be in office as long as fucking possible. Wow. We're 10 minutes into this video.
Do this. Remember, a decisive victory in a color revolution is not waiting out the clock for 4 years to allow Trump to implement his domestic policies. I'll be honest.
They're not thinking about 4 years, bro. They're thinking about 400 years. They don't play this short-term bullshit game like conservatives do.
I see a potential future where Trump has a similar impact on the United States that Reagan did, where you have this long-term kind of secular political cycle, where the country starts to become more conservative. So if you are the far left, if you are the left, you simply cannot fade into irrelevance if that happens.
Bro.
And so I think this may be existential for the far left. You know, you look at U.S. history, and this is really like the third iteration of the far left in this country.
Socialists don't vote at all. He thinks that the far left is afraid that Trump is going to stamp them out. This guy is talking about this guy, I promise you, this guy thinks that liberals and progressives are the far left. He thinks that Antifa are liberals and progressives. I fucking promise you. He's going to say it at some point.
The modern far left. You have the anarchists and the socialists back in the 19-teens. You had the Palmer raids. These violent anarchists mailed basically a pipe bomb to the home of Palmer, who is the attorney general. And he wasn't home, but I think his family was. And anyway, it blew up in his mailbox. And that ruined his week.
I knew.
And before you know, I think in like 1921 or so, 1919 or 21, you get the Palmer raids, and they go through and they just arrest thousands of these anarchists and socialists, and they deport them back to Europe.
Oh, that would be nice.
They tell Italy and Germany, we don't want your socialists. We don't want your anarchists.
We should really do that
again. Have them back.
Send them all to Australia.
And you also had this group called the Socialist Workers' Party, which is a revolutionary socialist party. Communist Party USA was formed in 1919 here in the United States.
Communist Party USA is not relevant.
Comintern, the Communist International. So that was the first iteration of the far left. And then you have the second iteration of the far left. And listen, basically they were destroyed. The FBI went after CPUSA. They went and arrested
Communist Party USA is irrelevant. But let me I'm going to put this out there before he gets to it. If anyone is under the impression that Antifa are the leaders of the far left, no. Antifa is like the infantry. Antifa is like they're usually mentally unhinged queer anarcho-communists, and they go out and they're the militant, violent arm of the far left. But they're not the leaders of the far left. Antifa's not the one coming up with the strategy. Antifa's not the one coming up with the ideas. Antifa are the mentally ill retards that get the foot soldiers. Thank you. I was trying to think of this term, Kings, and I couldn't think of it. They are the foot soldiers of the far left. They are not the leaders of the far left. Pop quiz in the chat. Who are the leaders of the far left? It's 3 words that start with the letter A. Who are the leaders on the far left? It's not one because they don't believe in hierarchies. It's a class of people. Who are the leaders on the far left? 3 words that begin with the letter A. The only thing this guy's gotten right so far is that the left is made up of decentralized cells all over the country. That's true enough. But how do those decentralized cells communicate with each other? How do they coordinate with each other? The academics, the authors, the academics, the authors, and the activists. Those are the leaders of the far left. The academics, the authors, and the activists. And there's overlap between those 3. So someone can be all 3 of those things. Someone can be an academic, someone can be an author, and someone can be an activist. But we're talking about people who are writing things, doing presentations at things, traveling around the country, speaking on things, writing books. This is how the far left coordinates with each other, is through education and information. And education and information is led by the 3 A's: academics, authors, activists. And people can be more than one of those things, but those are the leaders on the far left. Does everyone understand that? Antifa are the foot soldiers. It's the militant arm that are the foot soldiers. Usually they're mentally ill. Usually they're queer Marxists. They're fucked up in 19 different ways. Usually they're on any number of drugs. Usually they're sex workers, but they're fucking crazy. But they're weaponized for their purposes, but they're not the leaders. They're not the ones coming up with the ideas. They're not the ones out there presenting it. For the most part, every once in a while, there are Antifa people who present at conferences, and you can always tell who they are because they look extra crazy. But academics, authors, activists, those are the leaders on the far left.
Bunch of them on tax evasion. The FBI, back when it was an anti-communist organization, they would go to these people's house, the members of the Socialist Workers Party. They would go to their parents' house or their girlfriend's house and talk to the members' parents, or like the parents of the girlfriend, and say, do you know this guy's a subversive radical? Do you know this guy's a communist? Do you understand this is what your child's become? Or
that would be
the
great
girlfriend's
if the
parents.
FBI
And I read
did
this
that
in
today.
this one little thing in a book, but basically they said, do you want your girlfriend this subversive communist? And of course the answer is no. So that was the first iteration. And then you have the second iteration of the far left, which was in the 60s and 70s. And that's a lot more well-known. Weather Underground and Symbionese Liberation Army. And Students for a Democratic Society and the Weathermen. And
Okay.
there's a really great book about that called Days of Rage. And in that book,
Those were
the author
people
Brian
on the
Burrows
far
cites
left. I
some
wouldn't say they
FBI
were the second
statistics.
iteration of it.
There were 2,500 domestic bombings in the United States in the first 18 months of 1971 and 1972.
Weather Underground was made up of academics.
And then eventually that went away. So I think if you're the far left and you're looking at a Trump administration, you can't ride away forever. And if Trump really does have a lasting impact on this country, like the Reagan
What's the
presidency
current
did, where you
iteration?
have this effectively a shift.
He didn't even give us maybe this is what he's talking about, but he hasn't told us what the current iteration of the far left is, other than they're afraid of Trump, which isn't true.
A political shift. The far left is looking at irrelevance in the next few years. I do think that.
Bro, do you know that Bill Ayers from the Weather Underground is still active? Do you know that Angela Davis, who became a patron saint of the far left in the fucking 70s, is still active? You think the far left is going to be irrelevant in a couple of years? Are you off your fucking nut? They control all the public schools, bro. The far left literally controls the K-12 public schools in every fucking state in the country, including the red ones. And you think that Trump winning the presidency and abolishing the Department of Education maybe is going to fix that problem? This guy sucks. This guy sucks. I want everyone to bookmark this video and you come back to this exact moment in a couple years and we can revisit in a couple years just how irrelevant the far left is, because they are going to do nothing but recruit. They're going to recruit every disappointed person that really thought Kamala Harris was going to win, that feel like the Democratic Party failed them. They're going to recruit every fucking disaffected liberal that's like, the Democratic Party sucks and is never going to work for us. They are going to be and we know this because the communist organizations talk about it. The communist and socialist organizations talk about how they're seeing their memberships blow the fuck up because people are so sick of the Democratic Party. You really think they're going to go right to Trump? No, they're going to go to left. The Democratic Party never really worked for them anyway. Oh my God. People pay this guy $200 a year. Can I please meet my super chat goal? Can I get $52 more to meet my super chat goal? Because I've already provided people with more useful information in this one stream than this guy has behind his $200 paywall. I promise you that.
And then the third iteration will recede. And then I don't know. Our kids are going to have to deal with the fourth iteration, I guess. At any rate, there's two ways I see the far left trying to induce a domestic crisis for Trump. And really what they have to do is give people the desire to remove Trump from office.
No.
That's a huge challenge.
Wrong. Completely wrong.
But I think they're going to try to do it. They really don't have a choice.
What are you
so
talking
the first
about?
way is to build
perception they don't care about that
Trump is illegitimate. Because if you have an illegitimate president, then the next logical conclusion is that he needs to be replaced with someone who is legitimate.
They aren't even making that argument.
And that's really what the Russia hoax and the lawfare and the political warfare.
You're telling me this guy is listening to far left organizing calls? Because we've already listened to several far left organizing calls, and there has not been one moment where the far left has even made the argument that Trump is an illegitimate president.
And the impeachment we're all aimed at. Casting Trump is illegitimate.
No.
And therefore you have to remove him from office. Obviously that failed in the Senate, but they came really close.
No, they really
and you just look at Trump.
They actually did.
And they're talking about Elon Musk and Ron Paul joining the administration in some capacity to pare down government fraud, waste, and abuse. That's a lot of jobs. What's the saying about slaughtering the hog or the fat hog or something like that?
Yeah.
That's a lot of money that's going to disappear from these people's pockets. That's a lot of grift.
Yeah.
And I'm sure a lot of
He's
corruption
talking about progressives. That's not the
and
far
backdoor
left.
money making, because the way the system works is it's lots of people have said this. It is kind of a benefactor relationship where a politician gets elected, he or she funnels money to all these pet projects for these people, and they get mega $1 million contracts, and they get grants, and they get all sorts of stuff. It's a patronage network. And they get all this money from the federal government. And then what do? They donate some of that money back to the politician and get the politician reelected. I'm not saying that Trump is like going to be some political savior or anything.
Yeah, he probably
but
thinks AOC and
he's going to have some very
left.
serious people in
Exactly.
his administration. And if they
No,
are
he's
successful
not.
at some level, we'll talk about this a little bit later, but we actually may be in like an elite counter elite
Phil Labonte
situation,
vibes. Exactly.
which is actually one of the most dangerous things that can happen. We'll get to that later. The second possible way is that the far left has to build up so much domestic opposition that they create popular dissatisfaction and get Americans to demand Trump's resignation, because ultimately they want to remove him from office.
No, they don't.
And they do that through manufacturing crises and then exploiting and
There is not a single fucking far left group that's talking about removing Trump from office right now. I monitor all the major far left groups. There is not a single fucking far left group that is organizing at all around removing Trump from office. This is retarded.
amplifying that dissatisfaction. And that's why these mass mobilization
Hang on, we got a super chat from Rottweiler. Thank you, Rottweiler, for the super chat. I appreciate it. Seems this guy genuinely thinks that the far left are the people on TikTok posting their meltdowns and the corporate Democrat news media, and believes Trump will defeat communism in 4 years by decree. OMG. Yo. truer words have never been spoken, Rottweiler. I appreciate the super chat. Let me update my goal. We are now 53% of our way to the goal. I would really like to hit this goal by the end of the stream because this guy is getting people to pay him $200 for this really shitty analysis. I looked up this guy on Twitter. Apparently, he just watched the Revolutionary International Communist International Summit in June. He held his space on. Yeah, I mean, we watched that too. We watched that. Did they? That was that conference where they had the translator and it was like pulling teeth to watch it because like they spoke 2 sentences and then they did the translator. They didn't talk about removing anyone from office. It was actually a really boring conference, if we're honest about it. There wasn't even a lot of good stuff in it.
Protests and the amplification through media coverage are so important because they create the common perception of popular dissatisfaction. And I do think that was the intent behind the unrest of 2020. And speaking of the unrest of 2020, they called that a revolutionary rupture. That's a
no, they didn't.
Colloquial term on the far left.
No, they didn't. That's a colloquial term on the far left. You're so full of shit. They call the 2020 riots the George Floyd uprising or the George Floyd rebellion. That's what they call it. They don't call it a revolutionary rupture. They call it the George Floyd uprising or the George Floyd rebellion. There are literally books written called George Floyd Rebellion. How many videos have we watched about 2020 from the perspective of the far left? Have you ever heard the term revolutionary rupture? No.
It was the revolutionary rupture.
Wrong.
So when we look at this, especially low intensity conflict or any kind of revolutionary rupture, we're looking at 3 different things here. Number 1, on the left there, we're looking at fault lines. It was racial in 2020.
No.
It was class in 2008. So those fault lines.
Does this guy know whiteness means capitalism? No. The fault lines. Racial, class, economic, religion. No, there was no religion. No, political. No. This is all incorrect. This is like all incorrect.
They could be religious, class-based, economic, lots of potential fault lines.
I'm not even going to go through
and we
all
call
the
these
ways
social
in which
cleavages. And this is literally where the fabric of society starts to rip. These are the tectonic plates that are shifting against each other and creating these tremors. And then we have accelerators of conflict. So how the opposition media covers certain events could accelerate conflict. You can have sporadic violence or specific government policies that raise the temperature, raise the social temperature. And this is when we're bringing our pot here to a low boil. It's hot. We can see these bubbles start to form. And then it keeps getting hotter until it's just about to boil out of the pot. And that's what we call a trigger event. And triggers are specific events, or sometimes they are a string of events that cause a revolutionary rupture. So Lexington and Concord was one.
Yeah. Isn't it crazy that socialists that we listen to actually make more sense than this guy is making right now? This is why we listen to the far left guys. We don't can you really imagine a land in which we never started listening to the far left like 3.5 years ago or something? And then we'd be relying on guys like this to tell us about the far left. This is the fucking problem though. This is the problem. Because the vast majority of the conservative right are relying on people like this to educate them about the far left. And you know what? Those people are just looking for answers. Those people just want information. They're looking for the information. They don't know where to go. And they find guys like this that if you know nothing about the far left, if you've never listened to the far left, if you've never interacted with the far left, some things he's saying might sound reasonable if you have no concept of what the far left actually says and does. So they rely on people like this to educate them. They trust them to do the right thing. And then people like this lie to them. And that creates massive misperception on the conservative right about what the left is. Because when you're actually listening to the left, like we do 6 days a goddamn week, nothing this guy is saying right now aligns with what the far left actually says and does. So because of people like this, there is a massive gap between what the far left actually is and what conservative, low information people think the far left is. This is the problem. This is the biggest problem we have. People wonder why I spend so much time calling out other people on the internet and fighting with people on the internet, and they think it's just because I'm a mean narcissist. No, these people are why we lose. These people are why we lose, because not only are we fighting an uphill battle against the left, we are fighting we're fighting that uphill battle against the left as the conservative right is standing and running cover for the far left by throwing rocks at us the whole fucking time. We're sitting here trying to educate people. Here's what the far left is saying. Here's what they're doing. Here's how they're organizing. Here's what's going on in their meetings. People like this are standing in front of the left saying, no, don't hurt them, and throwing rocks at us the whole fucking time. These people are just as much an enemy to me as the far left is. Because they make fighting the far left impossible because they're standing in front of them protecting them. When millions of people on the conservative right are being misinformed fundamentally about what the far left is, that allows the actual far left to operate completely unopposed. There is no opposition to the far left in this country, except for people like us that actually listen to them, and we don't have the numbers to do anything with it. And the biggest challenge in getting the numbers is people like this who are lying to people. It's maddening. It is maddening. This is why we watch the far left, not far left commentators who shill hot air-induced disinformation. That's exactly right. Thank you, Dragon Balls, and thank you, Janet. If Trump doesn't improve something in the next 2 to 4 years, I wonder if MAGA people will go socialist. I mean, I don't know. If he doesn't follow through, people will be disillusioned and look for hope outside the two-party system. I don't know, Janet. That very well may be. That very well may be. Thank you guys for getting me 68% to my super chat goal. I'd love to get 100% today. This is painful. Yeah, we are in the perpetual struggle to liberate ourselves from the clutches of the retardia right. That is our struggle. Our struggle, our primary struggle is not against the left. We can't even get to the left. The left is like the end boss in the video game. We're not even at the end boss. We're at like the midpoint boss. Our struggle is against the retardia right.
Fort Sumter, the MLK assassination that kicked off the 1968 riots. Before that, Marquette Frye kicked off the Watts riots in 1965. Rodney King in 92 or whenever that was. And then George Floyd in late May 2020 that kicked off over 100 straight days of riots. Those were trigger events. Before you can get a trigger event, before you get this revolutionary rupture, you need accelerators of conflict that build pressure inside a system. Enough pressure so that it explodes. Our pot boils over or the system explodes. And before you can start building pressure, you need to exploit those social cleavages and drive a wedge into those fault lines. You have to continually tear at the fabric of society. That's the only way you get a revolution, by agitating and making people angry and resentment, and angry enough to spill into the streets and act. And we look back on 2016 to 2020, we saw a Trump term that was full of manufactured crises, full of these things that tore at the fabric of society, things that built pressure up inside the system until it was bound to explode at some point. I mean, every week, every month, there was something else. There was some new thing back during the last Trump administration. They have to return to that, because that's the kind of pressure campaign that the left needs to rebuild.
Does this idiot really think that the left hasn't been protesting and doing stuff like that the entire Biden campaign or the Biden administration? Where the fuck was this guy all last year? By the way, the college students are still protesting. People know that, right? I just saw a notice from Columbia University. Columbia University is holding like another fucking pro-Palestine protest this week. They've been protesting constantly. Did this guy really think that during the Biden administration the far left just took a break? Did he pay no attention to the campus protests? Does he have no idea how the campus protests were connected to the far left? Does he have no idea that the Party for Socialism and Liberation were intimately involved in organizing the campus protests? Does he have no idea that Jewish Voices for Peace, which is a far leftist Jewish organization, because they're not anti-Semitic, they don't care if people are Jewish, they're socialists. Intifada means worldwide socialist revolution. Does he have no idea who was involved in any of these things? Does he have no idea who's organized? There have been massive protests in Washington, D.C. The Party for Socialism and Liberation organized a protest in Washington, D.C., like 3 months ago, maybe, where they literally had a line of people all encircling the White House holding a fucking red ribbon saying, "This is our red line." He thinks they just went away?
And so a lot of people predicted riots in the street if Trump was elected. And it was a few weeks ago, I put up a video on YouTube that said, everyone's concerned about far left riots in the streets. We're not going to repeat 2020. It will not be as bad as 2020. And it will not be.
Bro.
But at any rate, the far left has to build up all this pressure into the system because they need the system to explode, because that's when you get that revolutionary rupture. That's when you get that mass mobilization, that mass participation event that puts people into the streets and gets people to take direct action. This is not going to happen immediately. The election of Trump was not a trigger. It was an accelerator at best. The inauguration, I don't think, is going to be the trigger. It may be an accelerator. But the chief task of the far left...
Does he not know? Does he have no idea that the far left is planning massive protests specifically focused on immigration at the inauguration? He covers all their organizing calls, and he hasn't quite figured out yet that the far left is planning a massive protest at the inauguration. We know that because we infiltrated we didn't infiltrate, it was live on YouTube. We watched one of their organizing calls the week after the election where they were talking about the mass protest at the inauguration, bro. Please.
Left right now is to get our society back to that point. Now, there are some other prerequisites or enabling factors for a color revolution. One is an imbalance between the power of the state and an atomized and isolated civil society. So when that happens,
yeah, over on Rumble, this is from R. Coddle over on Rumble. He's an idiot. This is the beginning of a long battle to oust this cancer from all our institutions. They've been building this shit up for many, many years. He thinks it's just going to go away. Yeah, that's a stupid idea. Rottweiler, thank you for the super chat. I wish someone would ask him why they're destabilizing the system for goals of the commie left. He just believes it's about progressive policies. Yeah, he obviously and clearly thinks we're talking about like AOC and the squad here. Obviously and clearly. Thank you for the super chat, Rottweiler. Let me add that to the total. Oh, God, you guys are making me do math because Rottweiler's not paying in American. I think that's right.
You have this social reaction that attempts to rebalance the power, reduce the power of the state, and increase the power of civil society. So the question is, how is the far left going to promote the perception of those conditions?
They're not.
Next is awareness and education on nonviolent resistance, because participants have to understand what role they play in a color revolution. Having gone through 2020, I think that is much more ingrained into the educational doctrine of the left. And finally, powerful NGOs or non-governmental organizations that are capable of developing a strategic plan for revolution.
He thinks that the far left is the WEF. He thinks that the far left is Soros funded. Powerful non-governmental organizations? Really? You think that Antifa has a powerful non-governmental organization? Are you fucking retarded? Have you seen Antifa?
And also capable of organizing and directing these resistance campaigns. There are two organizations. One is Refuse Fascism, and the other one is a new group that I had not heard before until about a week ago called the Election Response Center. and they're holding strategy calls this week. And this is the kind of stuff they are discussing. How can they get the resistance?
Can we look up resist fascism and what is it? Election Response Center? Hang on. Election Response Center. I've heard of resist fascism before, not now. Election Response Center is progressive. I think resist fascism is progressive too. Resist fascism. Oh, let me see. Yeah, Election Response Center is 100%. That's progressive. That's progressive. That is not the far left at all. Resist fascism looks a little more fascist. It looks a little bit more leftist. It has a look of a little bit more leftist organization, but it looks kind of like BAM. So that might actually be more leftist, and we should probably be paying more attention to them than we are. I think we've paid attention to them before, but like Election Response Center is progressive, bro. Like, come on. I can tell that just by looking at it.
And get American society back to the point of bringing about a revolutionary rupture against Trump. You know, there's a comment here. Hard to see Antifa operating in a nonviolent fashion. Well, they operate in a non-armed fashion.
No.
By and large.
Wrong.
There's been very little armed violence. Some, but very little.
Just because they haven't done
Throwing
it yet
bricks and Molotov
guns,
cocktails and incendiary devices at cops is not what anyone would call nonviolent. But that is still beneath the threshold of any kind of conventional armed conflict. So let's talk about this color revolution here.
Yeah, let's
talk about why it has to be predominantly nonviolent to work. Again, some people may think it's counterintuitive, but this is ultimately about soft power versus hard power. And hard power is the use of force and coercion or the credible threat of violence. And traditionally, when we talk about warfare, we're talking about the exercise of organized murder. That is hard power. That is hard power projection. But then there's also soft power, and that includes things like reputation and persuasion and influence, and most importantly, moral authority. When you go out and start shooting people, you lose the moral authority. You diminish your soft power. And these color revolutions, the popular revolutions, the mass mobilization protests are built on soft power. That's one reason why they pursue nonviolent forms of action. And this is the main point here on nonviolence versus violence and why resistance elements in a color revolution choose nonviolence. Violent resistance movements often turn into civil wars. They carry very negative consequences. There's no guarantee of success. There's also a very high death and casualty toll. And the state has more hard power than you. I mean, if you're the far left, you do not want to get into a hard power contest against the Trump administration, a hard power contest. They have more troops and personnel. They have bigger and better weapons. They can kill a lot more of you than you can kill of them. And in these violent conflicts, we're typically talking about guerrilla wars and insurgencies. And if you know anything about insurgencies, they're not quick. The average length of an insurgency is about 10 years. So who wants a hot war with their government that lasts from the time your son is a newborn until the time he graduates from the third grade? And that's a long time. But you look at the history of color revolutions, they're typically measured in months.
Yeah, so Death Beholden over on Rumble says unless they have the military in their pocket and then they turn the military on Trump. It's funny you say that, Death Beholden, because we literally have the Denver Communists on video saying that they're working on getting the military in their back pocket, and when they eventually do violently overthrow the federal government, it will be because the military turned on the government. We have them on video saying this. I covered it, what was it, like maybe a month ago or so. It got picked up by Andy Ngo and the Post Millennial. They covered it too, but we literally have them on video saying that they're working on getting the military in their back pocket. They don't have it yet. We're still probably about 10 to 15 years away from their attempt at violently overthrowing the federal government. It could be more, it could be less, depending on what happens. You just never know when there might be a moment that they might try to do it. But like, when they go, it's going to be quick. It's not going to be this 10-year protracted bullshit. It's going to be quick. Yeah, exactly. You can always tell the grifters, they always make things convoluted and complicated rather than simplify for their audience. I try to make things as simple as possible. I'm not perfect, but I think I do a pretty good job.
Sometimes in weeks. And that's because of how a color revolution is waged. This is the big thing that people on the right just typically don't understand. Again, people on the right think violence or warfare is a switch. It's on or it's off. The left views violence or conflict as a
right
dial
about hard power versus soft
that
power.
can be turned up or
That's
down depending on the situation. So the overall goal of a color revolution is to topple an existing government. In the case of the manual, they're talking about toppling dictatorships.
They're not
in the
talking
case
about
of the
toppling
people
Trump.
who use this manual as a basis for the anti-Trump resistance, they're talking
They
about
don't use that manual. We've never
forcing
heard of that
Trump out of
manual.
office in
No.
the shortest amount of time and with the least amount of human.
It is true that the far I hate to say this stuff over and over and over again, but I feel like I need to. Like, it is true that the far left wants to overthrow the federal government. That has nothing to do with Donald Trump. Has nothing to do with him. If Kamala Harris had won the election, the far left would still want to overthrow the government. When Joe Biden was in office, the far left still wanted to overthrow the government. When Barack Obama got elected president, they were kind of okay with that for a while, but like the far left still wanted to overthrow the government. Because the goal of the far left is not to overthrow Donald Trump specifically. They think Donald Trump's going to help them recruit, but it is to overthrow the capitalist system that our government is built on. The far left believes that our Constitution is based in capitalism. They believe that the entire structure of government that we have is based in capitalism. They believe the Electoral College is based in capitalism. They believe the Supreme Court is based in capitalism. They want to abolish the Constitution, abolish the Electoral College, abolish the Supreme Court, abolish the Senate, abolish the executive branch. They're okay with some House of Representatives style thing, but it's not going to be the same thing we have right now. They want to abolish the police. They want to get rid of a lot of the military. Like, that's what the far left wants to overthrow. It is not Donald Trump. It is the capitalist U.S. government.
And suffering. That is the two of the big points from this book. And the way to do that is by creating vulnerabilities within the foundations of government and then attacking those nonviolently. These are the three pillars of government. By the way, this is not in the book. I'm going to do a little mansplaining here. Government sits on top of three
I'm
pillars:
doing some
legitimacy,
womansplaining
authority,
here.
and capacity. Legitimacy is the recognized right of a government to rule. So in our case, a lawfully elected president is viewed as legitimate. We have lawfully elected Congress, so on and so forth. Whereas a president who steals an election, whether that's real or perceived, will be seen, at least by some, as illegitimate. If there's a military coup, if there is use of force involved in taking over a government, they're going to be seen as illegitimate. They did not come into power through legitimate means. That's a huge problem. Next is authority, and that is the ability to enforce your laws. So a government is unable to enforce its laws in places where it has no authority or where no one recognizes their authority. So authority is something that can be undermined.
Yeah, we did that yesterday.
And finally,
though. We're doing
capacity
this
is
right
the
now.
ability
Thank
to carry
you,
out
though.
the state's duties. So
I don't
government
feel like
may be
watching
legitimate.
Haymarket books today.
It may have authority. But if it lacks the money or manpower to carry out its duties, then its legitimacy and authority will suffer. And these are the targets of a color revolution. I can't tell you how many times in this book the author talks about mass political defiance. That mass political defiance strikes at the foundations of government, of legitimacy, by convincing other powerful people and powerful institutions of the illegitimacy of the government. John Boyd talked about grand strategy. Actually, this book talks about grand strategy too. But one of the most important things John Boyd said about grand strategy is he said, it is the process of connecting yourself to as many power centers as possible while simultaneously disconnecting your opponent from as many power centers as possible. And this is what nonviolent warfare is all about. It is getting individuals, powerful people, and the masses of people. It's getting institutions to withdraw support for a dictator or would withdraw support from a regime or from a presidential administration in this case, and you look back 2016 to 2020, it's exactly what they were doing. A color revolution strikes at authority by getting others to ignore laws, or by convincing others that government authority is immoral and therefore doesn't need to be recognized or obeyed. And finally, it strikes at capacity by reducing access to the things that a government needs to function. That could be money, could be natural resources.
But we can watch that another time.
Could
I
be
don't
human
feel like
capital.
it. Thank you, though.
The ability to
Go watch
get
it
large
tomorrow.
groups of people, we're talking about mass participation here, to attack these pillars of a government in unison is far more powerful than any standing army. Again, I'll just repeat that part. Getting the mass of people to attack these pillars in unison is far more powerful than a standing army.
That's true. Correct.
Legitimacy, especially.
That's not what they're attacking.
That is the Achilles heel of any government, be they dictator or lawfully elected government. When a resistance element is able to erode the public's trust in government, and they're able to encourage the view that a government is illegitimate, then the people no longer have a moral duty to obey it. And when the mass of the people believe that a government is illegitimate, they will demand or create an alternative. And that's how you get shadow governments. And that's how you get revolutions. When enough people drop their allegiance to an existing government in favor of an alternative. And this is exactly what a color revolution does. And this is the primary challenge and also the chief objective for the far left going forward. This would be their
Wrong.
grand strategy.
Wrong.
A color revolution doesn't actually need weapons or the
They
use of
have
violence
weapons.
to attack the political power of
They
a
will
regime.
use violence.
Or in this case, to attack the political power of a lawfully elected President Trump. And this is something that could start with 1,000 people. And then those 1,000 people get organized and they go and
I don't know. He picked Pam Bondi as AG. I don't know who Pam Bondi is. Do you know anything about her, Kristen? I have no idea. I'm still pissed off about the Matt Gaetz things. I gave my thoughts about the Matt Gaetz thing on the earlier stream when we were waiting for Canadian Parliament to come on. So I'll post a clip of that. But essentially, like, I think that I don't think this was some grand 4D chess move on the part of Trump. Oh, it's the Florida AG? Okay, cool. I don't think that Matt Gaetz getting nominated to AG and then withdrawing was some grand 4D chess move like people are trying to make it seem. I think that basically Trump got a lot of heat for it, Matt Gaetz got a lot of heat for it, and Trump caved. And I think the fact that Trump caved on this is just a sign to us that Trump is going to cave on everything. He's going to cave on mass deportations. He's going to cave on everything that is even remotely unpopular. The establishment wins. We lose again. Israel wins. America loses. This is like the worst possible thing that could have happened, because it just shows that Trump is a massive, 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 massive pussy.
convince their friends and neighbors and comrades that a sitting government is illegitimate.
That's not what they're trying to do.
They may be able to do this a number of ways. Talk about that a little bit later. They use any opportunity to manufacture a crisis that undermines legitimacy or to provoke an overreaction by the government security forces, such as beating or killing peaceful protesters. That is going to undermine the legitimacy in the eyes of the people watching those videos. I mean, how many times have we seen in Iran and other places security forces attacking peaceful protesters? And what is the international response always? It's always the same thing. It is not very good for the Iranian regime. Or they could do this by cooking up scandals or criminal probes or criminal charges or accusations of corruption, which don't have to be false. They also don't have to be true. But all those things can further undermine a government's legitimacy. And this should be sounding pretty familiar to everybody. All citizens of a country fall somewhere on this spectrum from support to defiance. And one of the overarching goals of any revolutionary is to move the mass of the people from some level of support to some level of defiance. And this is what they attempted to do from 2016 to 2020. A substantial portion of this manual is dedicated to the concept of reducing support for a government, which can be translated reducing support for a Trump administration.
No.
And it talks about compelling.
And again, this is how we know that this guy doesn't know shit about the far left, because he read some manual. By the way, like, he doesn't understand that when it says from dictatorship to democracy on that manual, when the far left says democracy, they mean socialism. He doesn't understand that. He also doesn't understand when the manual talks about sowing illegitimacy for government, it has nothing to do with who the president is. It has nothing to do with Donald Trump. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with the fact that they believe that the United States is a capitalist government because capitalism is their number one enemy. And I'm sorry, he hasn't said we're halfway through this video. He has not said the word capitalism once, which means he fundamentally does not understand the far left at all. If you are, and this guy's like, you really got to use this to be a way to suss out who are the fucking grifters and who actually knows what they're talking about. Because when you listen to the real far left, they say capitalism all the goddamn time. So if an analyst on the quote-unquote right is doing an analysis of the far left and they don't say the term capitalism once and they present no indication that the far left is trying to overthrow capitalism, then that person doesn't know what the fuck they're talking about. He has fundamentally misinterpreted his own materials. And by the way, I'm not even convinced the left is actually using those materials in the first place, because I've never seen them talk about it in any of their training sessions.
Supporters to drop their support. Talks about how to approach the military and military officers and police units
because they're trying to turn the military against them. Yes,
or to encourage defections. These are all things that I expect will happen again.
Has nothing to do
especially
with
around these deportations. I think this is if there were one thing that I were going to attack it would be the deportation stuff.
Well, that's
for a couple of reasons. Number one,
that's true. Hang on, I'm going to give my reasons they're going to attack the mass immigration stuff. First of all, they're going to attack the mass immigration stuff because a lot of people on the left, like on the real far left, are immigrants or no immigrants or involved in immigrant groups. So this is actually going to deeply affect them when mass deportations happen. But it's also that the far left doesn't believe in borders. The far left believes that borders uphold capitalism. They want a completely open border society. That means borders for the country, borders for the states, borders for the counties, borders for your house. They don't believe in any private property, anything. And so they don't believe that borders should exist at all. So that's going to be another thing. Also, it just happens to be the biggest thing Trump is doing. Like, it just happens to be the biggest thing that Trump is going with out of the gate. And so if Trump was really pushing another initiative, that's where the far left would focus. But the biggest bang for their buck that they're going to get is immigration, because the biggest thing Trump's talking about doing out the gate is mass deportation. So that makes the most sense on like a number of different levels. They have specific immigrant rights groups and like collective action groups on the left. A lot of like, you look at oh God, Freedom Road Socialist Organization. Freedom Road Socialist Organization, I think, is mostly made up of like immigrants and things like that. And so you have those organizations that have that very specific niche. So that's another reason they're doing it. Let's see what he says.
Somewhere around 50% of the country actually supports mass deportation. According to one poll I saw just a few weeks ago, 56% of Americans support mass deportation. Trump has a mandate to do that. He says it's going to start happening on day one. And I'm sure people will some of them will self-deport as well. But if you're the Democrats, you spent so much political capital moving these people into the country.
There it is. There it is. He thinks the far left are the Democrats. I told you he was going to say it at some point in this presentation. He thinks that the far left are the Democrats.
In order to make them citizens. I'll tell you what. This country may actually have averted a constitutional crisis and maybe some form of domestic conflict by electing Trump. If Harris had won, and if Democrats had held the Senate and taken the House, mass amnesty would be on the table. States like Texas and Florida would be flipped blue in 28 if those conditions stood. if those laws were passed, this country would never be the same, one way or the other. So I actually think we averted a national
Yeah, and
catastrophe.
I agree with Death Beholden over on Rumble. I'll believe that mass deportations are going to happen when they actually happen. Because again, I think that this whole thing with Trump caving on Matt Gaetz' AG is just like a preview of what we're going to get on Trump caving on every single topic that he tries to push that's even the slightest bit unpopular. And we can't kid ourselves. There are going to be mass fucking protests over the deportations. The left is going to put up a big stink. The media is going to put up a big stink. Even Republicans are going to put up a big stink about this because establishment Republicans don't actually want the mass deportations for a number of reasons. Trump is going to cave on mass deportations. It's not going to happen.
Catastrophe by electing Trump. Looking ahead here to 2025 and beyond, I think mass deportations and violence against ICE is by far the most likely course of action, because the far left can attack legitimacy by attacking those things. They say, oh, deportation is immoral. They're just as American as you. They do the jobs you don't want to do. They've been here for 30 years. This person's a grandma and has 3 kids here. And they'll say deportation is immoral. And an immoral government is an illegitimate government. They need to come up with some kind of catchy slogan for that. I'm sure, they had a few back in 2016 to 2020 or 2017 to 20. They can use this to attack authority. They can encourage non-cooperation and open defiance. About 6 months ago, I noticed some of these pro-immigration groups and the social activists started holding what's called de-arrest training. And de-arresting is when activists go
True.
and they pull people as ICE or law enforcement is trying to arrest
true.
someone.
They do that.
They get de-arrested. They get pulled. They get pulled away from police.
And this is where people like this really piss me off, because like the fact that he knows they're doing de-arrest training. I mean, does he understand that they ask for people to volunteer to be arrested in the first place, and then they do trainings with those specific people? Like he has nuggets of information that tell me that he has actually interacted with the far left on some level, but he's so blinded by all the conservative bullshit that even when he has a nugget of information that's correct, it's just covered in mounds and mounds and mounds of conservative narrative and bullshit, and so it doesn't even matter anymore.
Custody. And there's a bunch of videos from 2017 to 2020 showing this. And they're holding trainings. They're holding trainings on how to set up blockades,
True.
how to deny entry or block entry. You remember one of the things they were doing back during the ICE deportations, back during the first Trump administration? They're handing out these flyers. Know your rights. If you're an undocumented American, here are your rights. You have the right to this, and so on and so forth. And they try to build this big mass movement around blocking ICE access and not allowing them to arrest these illegals.
And they're going to do
like
it again.
hiding Anne Frank up in their attic. I mean, it was what it was. All that stuff's coming back. At any rate, they can also use this to attack capacity. So property damage against ICE vehicles, we saw that.
True, they're going to
during
do
the last
that.
go round. We'll see it again.
True.
Violence against ICE personnel, we saw that in the last go round. We're going to see this again.
True.
I think they also will attempt to provoke an overreaction. One chain of events that is a possibility is you have these pro-Palestine people who are also on the verge of irrelevance. They just Unity of Fields is the
He doesn't understand that the pro-Palestine people and the far left are the same thing. He doesn't understand that the anti-mass deportation people and the pro-Palestine people are literally the same fucking people.
the kind of the umbrella group over there. And they even said just a couple of weeks ago, they're like, we either need to broaden this coalition and start including more people because we're shrinking. They didn't say they're shrinking, but they are shrinking.
They're not shrinking.
We either need to broaden
That's
our
not
coalition.
true. I don't know who this
or
guy's listening
we're just going to be
That's not true.
counterinsurgency into irrelevance.
Bro, I don't know what fucking Okay, you know what's happening? You know what's happening? Remember, he's listening to progressive groups. That's who he's listening to. Progressive groups. Progressive groups are not the far left. I can absolutely buy into the idea that progressive groups might be shrinking right now. Do you want to know why? Because the real far left is radicalizing the progressives. And the real far left groups, like the Party for Socialism and Liberation, the Revolutionary Communists of America, the campus protesters, all this stuff, they're only reporting that their numbers are growing. If you listen to their calls, they're like, yeah, we're getting more interest than ever. So it might be true that there are some groups that are shrinking, but I'm betting those groups are going to be more progressive, which is who he's obviously listening to. Where are those people going? They're going to the real far left. Tayton, pro-Palestine is their strongest argument because people like Nick support it in different ways. I think they're shifting away from pro-Palestine. And it's not because the interest in pro-Palestine is waning. It's not because the Trump administration is pro-Israel. It's because they've been doing it for a year now, and now they can get a bigger bang for their buck being anti-Trump and like anti-mass deportation, and like they can recruit more people doing anti-Trump messaging than they can doing pro-Palestine messaging. So that's my take on it. Anyway, I appreciate the super chat.
So one way I see they can become relevant again is either you have these pro-Palestine groups, or maybe like Palestine Action USA, and there's some other ones, or some
That's a progressive
part of the
group.
far left movement becomes overtly violent against a pro-Israel Trump administration.
Yeah, they're going to
If
do
you're the
that.
Trump administration, I think you have to be very careful, and regardless of what the attack is, I think you have to show some restraint, because any misstep or any overreaction is going to be characterized as fascist. And I think that has actually the likelihood not just of provoking anger, but actually increasing some hostility among the moderate left. And again, if you're a revolutionary, your job is to reduce the level of support and increase the level of defiance. And so provoking these overreactions is a really good way to do that. It's a really good way to turn neutral people into non-compliant or non-cooperative people. And I think that's got to be part of the plan. Also, I think economic warfare is again on the table.
The progressives.
This is something that we saw back during the last Trump administration. I'll show you a larger view of this map here in just a second. But I think we could see, this is a very distinctly possible course of action, economic warfare to coerce an end to Trump policies or budget cuts. If Elon Musk has this, what's called DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, if he does have this input into the Trump budget, which could be passed by the House, reducing fraud, waste, and abuse, that's a lot of people's fat hogs who are going to be slaughtered. That's a lot of grift and a lot of money that is going to disappear.
There is a lot of grift, that's for sure.
And so I think we could see those people who are dependent on that kind of patronage system move to support economic warfare. That could be the use of selective strikes and work stoppages or slowdowns,
They've already
blockades
been
of
doing work
ports and
stoppages.
commercial facilities. They have tried to do this multiple times, actually, in the past year.
True.
We've seen
Exactly.
lots of this stuff. It's been low level. It's been sporadic. It's been pretty short-lived. But blocking entrances to ports, we've seen that multiple times. Here's a bigger view. This was back in 2020. There was a pamphlet that was published. By the way, I collect all this Antifa stuff. Like anytime I see a zine or like a manual.
Ooh, a zine. He knows the word.
By the way, I was just showing Mark these earlier. I buy this stuff. If I can't find it, like I go to these anarchist book fairs, and like this one was like $4.
Okay.
But this one's called Blocks and Tactical Evolution. It's about how to run Black Bloc, how to organize an insurrection. I keep all these pamphlets and stuff.
See,
so here's
those pamphlets are actually legit. This is what pisses me off. Bro, are you actually reading the fucking pamphlets that you're collecting? Like, this is what pisses me off. He literally has their fucking materials. Those are legit materials. Why isn't he reading them? Is he just like scanning them and putting them on his website to make money, and he's not actually reading them? Because there's no fucking way. if he has a library full of like pamphlets like he just showed, those are, and by the way, we can probably find those online on like Crime Thinks website or something like that, or like the Anarchist Library. We can probably find those things online. There are lots of zine websites that we know about where they archive these things too. So I don't actually think we need to pay for them, but like it really pisses me off. Why isn't he reading them?
One that I found online, I downloaded it, started flipping through it.
Downloaded it.
And one of the things they were saying is how
See?
relatively easy it would be if you did have a mass mobilization movement, how easy it would be to shut down the national economy. And this is what they were talking about doing back in 2020. They said
They've
if
been
Trump had
talking
stayed
about
in
doing it
office,
a long time before that.
legitimately or illegitimately, it did not matter. If Trump had stayed in office, they were going to shut down the U.S. economy. And they were essentially going to hold the U.S. economy hostage until Trump resigned. They talk. There's recordings on Zoom calls, Shut Down DC, and all these other organizations talking about this stuff.
It's a progressive group that's not far
There are
left.
people talking about bombing the FedEx facility in Memphis
That's far
to
left.
stop the, if not the largest, then one of the largest commercial shipping companies in the United States, at least for mail. So at any rate, they're talking about all the ways that you could shut down import and export activities by blocking the ports, blocking commercial facilities, blocking arteries that are used to transport goods. Choke points in a fragile network. I shared it with early warning members like a day after it came out. By the way, I pass all this stuff on to early warning folks. Another, just two more considerations here for
and
25
none of them
and beyond.
read it.
I think domestic terrorism against the Trump administration and MAGA politicians is on the table. I mean, we saw that back in 2016 with the Steve Scalise shooting and some other stuff. That could happen again. I think you have a small minority, maybe a fraction of the far left. Here, let me tell you, can I just tell you what's actually going on with the far left right now?
Yeah, can you just tell us what you
They're
think
exhausted.
is going on?
They're still exhausted. They
Can we just watch that again for comedy?
right now. They're exhausted. They're still exhausted. They do not.
Just one more time, just for me. Just for me. Just for me.
Of the far left. Here, let me tell you, can I just tell you what's actually going on with the far left right now? They're exhausted.
Yeah. Only a literal retard who doesn't understand the far left at all, who doesn't listen to anything the far left actually says and does, believes they're exhausted. That's just not true. They were literally the far left in between Trump getting elected on Tuesday and Thursday had already planned a mass rally at Trump's inauguration. And I know because that organizing call that we went to, where they initially launched the mass rally at Trump's inauguration about immigration, that was 2 days after the election. 2 fucking days after the election. You want to tell me they're exhausted? There were 40,000 fucking people on one of those calls that we watched. Now that was a more progressive leaning call, but don't tell me they were exhausted. That was one day after the election. 40,000 people. Exhausted people don't join an organizing call the day after the presidential election if they're like, I mean, that's just like, bro.
They're still exhausted. They do not want
No.
to get out there and fight with cops for another 4 years.
Bro!
There's a reason.
There is nothing the left loves more than to fight with cops. Fighting with cops. We just watched an entire presentation yesterday about parenting for abolition on Haymarket Books' YouTube channel. Abolition means fighting the prison industrial complex, abolish the police. There's nothing they're just so afraid of getting out there and fighting with cops. No, they're not. They love fighting with cops.
Well, there's a couple of things, but I'll just say this. Even these anarchist blogs are saying this stuff.
Oh my God.
I mean, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez just the other day published a video to her social media account. She's like, do we really want?
He thinks, I told you guys, he thinks AOC is the far left. Bro, the real far left denounces AOC all the time because they think she's a traitor because she capitulated to capitalism. AOC isn't a communist. Yeah, Sam, you called it. You, Sam W. Yeah, you win, he loses. Exactly. AOC isn't a communist, bro.
I want to do this for another 4 years.
The real communists hate her.
They don't want to go through this again.
Oh my fucking God.
So, you're going to have, and by the way,
This
two
is
nights
so
ago, Tuesday
dumb.
night,
This
some
is so
Antifas over in
stupid.
Seattle
Some Antifas.
tried to do a little direct action demonstration.
Oh, did they?
Didn't get too far because they got clobbered by Seattle PD.
Yeah, and they
And
loved
the cops went in there and
arrested.
arrested them. And then you have this RICO case in Georgia. Georgia State Police went in and arrested 61 of these people for various crimes and infractions, but they got them on RICO charges. And I think a handful was like 3 or 5 or something like that were.
No, I don't believe
charged
he's
with
ever
domestic
been to
terror.
a communist event.
And even in
I
Portland, you have
agree
the
with Vanderbeek.
Portland Police Bureau Chief Mike Day out there saying this summer, we're not going to do this again. We're not going to allow these people room to riot.
Yeah, well, we'll
We're,
see.
we're not putting the city through that again.
We'll see,
Things have changed. These
bro.
people, these groups do not have the freedom of movement like they
You don't
like
even
they
know
did.
who these groups are.
It is a different country now. So if they're not able to go out and listen, I'm not saying this will end their direct action demonstrations.
Listen. I don't want to appear like I'm begging for money on the internet. But I'm right now feeling a little bit annoyed that this guy is getting people to pay him $200 to tell them that AOC is a far leftist. So if someone wants to donate $24 to help me meet my super chat goal, that'd be cool.
There obviously will continue to be.
I know
But
this is
they're in a much
painful.
more adversarial, much
I'm
more hostile
sorry.
environment with law
It's not
enforcement
my
today.
fault. I wanted
So,
him to be good.
Things have changed. I think this is obviously going to diminish some of their activity, not all of it. But I think the most dangerous course of action here is you do have this small minority of this far left movement, the true believers, like the real hardcore crust punks, the Matthew Reinholds and the William Van Spronsons, who get moved to armed political violence. I think domestic terrorism is definitely a course of action that I think will be pursued by some people, not many,
Nick.
relatively few, but it will happen. I
Thank
think.
you, Nick. I really do appreciate you.
Also, inter-elite conflict.
Above and beyond, my friend.
This is something I
Jay
started tracking the far
Coney,
left, back in
Thank
2016.
you for the
and-
super sticker.
well, I started looking at the
Thank you,
overlap between
guys.
political,
We did
social,
it.
and economic
We made it.
layers of low intensity conflict.
Thank you.
And where political and social overlap, you get conservatives and progressives. Where social and economic
Tolkien.
overlap,
Yo!
you have
See, now everyone's sending me money. Don't you guys appreciate me so much more now? I might listen. You guys are Thank you guys. Don't you guys appreciate me so much more now? I might be a bitch and I might be mean sometimes, but I tell you the truth, don't I? But I tell you the truth and I defend you from people like this. Tolkien fan, in with the win. South Pod, in with the win. I missed most of the stream as I was closing a sale to some of my private property owning customers. Is this? Yes, this guy's yes, South Pod. Thank you for the super chat. Honest Dog Allison, above and beyond. Thank you for bringing this video to my attention and giving me this painful experience for the last couple hours. We still have 20 more minutes left to go. I blame you, Allison. Thank you for doing penance by sending a super chat. What am I up to now? I think that was 45, so we're 146. Thank you guys. I really do appreciate it.
Capitalists and socialists.
Yo!
But where social
Did he actually just say the word capitalism? Okay, I have to listen to that again.
where social and economic overlap, you have capitalists and socialists.
Oh, wait. He thinks capitalism is just an economic model to the left. Yeah. No, it's not. It's a social model.
But where economic and political overlaps, you get
I was so
the
excited for a
elites,
second.
autocrats versus populists.
No, wrong.
And that was the missing
Wrong.
piece of low intensity conflict.
Wrong.
And you read guys like Peter Turchin and Jack Goldstone, and I love Jack Goldstone's stuff. But, one of his big things is he talks about revolution, and he says a lot of people think revolution is a top-down event, and it's actually not. Or a bottom-up event. Revolutions are rarely peasants and pitchforks. You may have like revolts and stuff,
this is
but
peasants
not
and
real
pitchforks,
revolutions that actually, not actually state breakdown,
Oh, wrong.
where an existing government breaks down.
Wrong.
But he said this actually happens with the formation of elites and counter elites. And I look at guys like Elon Musk and Donald Trump and Peter Thiel and some of the other folks. And I'm not talking about some of the liberal tech bros and the liberal hedge funders who just didn't like Kamala Harris, who are not true believers. I look at that and I see the formation of a counter elite, which is very dangerous. Because that's actually when you get periods of state breakdown. When the elite and the counter elite get into conflict, that's when the stuff actually happens. And you look at the American Revolution and nothing happened until the elite started getting pinched. And then stuff started happening. So anytime you have a formation of an elite and a counter elite, things become very precarious. And so I think there's a possibility for inter-elite conflict that leads to organized political violence over the next 4 years. That is also a most dangerous course of action for me that I'm following.
Hey,
Yeah, it's the money.
Thanks, Kristen. Appreciate
When
you.
when the spigots that were running at full blast get cut off, you get a lot of angry people. Let me tell you about what we do every day at Early Warning Network.
Yes, tell us about what you do. Oh, now
We
here's the
produce an
sales
intelligence
pitch.
briefing
Here's
every
the
morning.
sales
It goes out via
pitch.
email.
Yeah,
It's also
pretty
posted
much.
to our web app. And we also do a live morning briefing. It is the best 5-minute briefing without a top secret security clearance.
Sales pitch.
We cover what's going on in the Beltway, and I'm not talking about what you will go home and watch on Fox News or CNN. We talk about internal government documents and political documents.
Why does this
that
guy have to read off
otherwise
a
don't
script
see
for
the light of
everything?
day? We talk about national security stuff that's happening within government and here in the West, foreign activity here in the Western Hemisphere. We talk about risks to agriculture and the supply chain. We monitor critical infrastructure and the energy sector. We also track upcoming protests and civil unrest. We have a whole
Hey, thank you,
whole
Not
tab.
Julius. I
we also
appreciate
are
you.
running a map now,
First
an
super chat
interactive
from,
map where you can
from
actually
Not
zoom in and see where the
Julius. Thank
upcoming
you.
protests are in your area. And then we track the risk of war, the geostrategic level, NATO, Russia, US, China, really this whole East-West geostrategic conflict that's been developing. The United States and Europe versus BRICS. But I want to invite you to join the Early Warning Network. This is an offer that I will make to y'all tonight. Pretty much one time only. I'm going to send you an email after this.
One
with a
time
link.
only.
You can save, I think it's like 50% or something like that right now. $199 for the next year. I mean, think about all the things that are going to happen in the next year,
discount.
starting with this transition to the
Usually it's
inauguration, the first 100
$400.
days, the first summer, the first potential riot season, the first big protest season against the Trump administration and beyond. You're going to get a daily briefing on the far left. Everything that I come across filtering through their stuff, I put in the
Bro.
report. We also have that daily riot and protest tracker, the interactive map, where you can zoom in and out
I'm going to do
and
a
see what these
daily
protests
briefing
are.
for free.
There are a lot of other early warning network benefits as well. And what I'm going to do for people who sign up tonight, there's got to be at least 100 in there. There may be substantially more. There's at least 100 far left
What I'm
publications,
gonna
zines,
do
and manuals,
Is
stuff
give
like
you
this,
all of my
how to
Antifa
organize an
stuff.
insurrection. I got a bunch of stuff in there. I'm going to give that to you for free. It's already on Dropbox. I'll send you the link. You can download it. You can flip through this stuff
He's
yourself
literally
and look at
giving
their
you a
tactics and
Dropbox
look at the
link.
doctrine and look at how they're educating other people within the far left. I'll throw that in there for free for everyone who signs up tonight. Doc says, I've followed Mike and the team for over 4 years, kept friends, including my daughter, safe in 2020
Maybe I
based
should
on
do
their
a
intel.
daily podcast brief.
Yeah, that's when we started when we started producing daily intel
No, I can't
reports
do
on
a
what
daily.
was going on
I can't do daily. I can't do it,
with
guys.
the far left revolutionaries.
These streams are
all
your
across the
daily
country.
briefing, okay?
How much does the word fascist even work anymore? No one knows what fascism is anymore.
Bro!
And this is why the leaders of color revolutions need to.
When the far left says fascism, they mean free market capitalism or nationalism or anything that isn't socialism. Far left believes that anyone who is not a socialist is a fascist. This is the same shit I do. Well, and that's what I said at the beginning, Southpaw. That's what I said in the beginning. Because as soon as I saw his website, I was like, this is a sales funnel. I know exactly what this is. I used to do this when I was doing like organizational consulting. I had all these sales funnels built. And they work. Sales funnels work. It's why people do them.
Be identified.
I want to build my own
Yeah,
sales
I mean,
funnel.
listen, it's the non-governmental organizations, it's the NGOs who do this stuff around the world. They've increasingly turned their attention since late 2016 here to the United States. Can we get this map? Yeah, I mean, it's been online. When that map came out, I sent
can
out
pay
to
me
Early Warning Network
$200
subscribers. I
and
tell you what,
I
if
will
you
send
subscribe
you
to Early
anything
Warning
you want.
Network, not only can you get this map, you can get all future maps that we come across. Neocons are elite or counter elite. So the way this works, neocons would be the elites. They would be the elite establishment that's been in power. This is like the post 1945 establishment. The kind of globalists and internationalists. So neoconservatives
I just like
would be
hearing
the-
his sales pitch, though. I think this
would be
is
the
funny.
elite. The George
I think we're
Bush,
probably pretty done.
let's
but
go remake the Middle East. Let's go turn all these traditional societies into freedom, gay democracies. That's all the elite. Yeah, the way this works is you get into a period of what's called elite overproduction. And that's when a society produces more elites than there are elite positions. And this can be clearly seen back in I think that one of the best examples is in the lead up to the English Civil War, which was back in the 1640s into the 1650s. And what happened is you had the population, the percentage of the English population who were landless peasants went from 11% to 40% in less than 100 years. So it quadrupled. And now you have 40% of your entire society are landless peasants. There is no upward mobility. There is, it's just a lot more, it's popular immiseration is what it is. And so, another one of the things that happened to it is, or another one of the contributing factors is you had all the members of the gentry, the landed gentry class, and they would have 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 sons. And in that time, it was most common to give all of your land holdings to your first son. And so your second and third plus sons were just SOL, or maybe they got very small land holdings. Well, if your last name and your family is a member of the landed gentry and you have no land, and that means you have no land for your heirs either, you're basically going to push your family down into a lower strata of society. And so what these people did is they were locked out of these elite positions, and many of them became counter elites. And if you're an elite that is being locked out of your elite position, the only thing you can do is get pushed down into a lower social strata or go to war with the elites. And that's one of the things that happened. And that's one of the things I'm very concerned that may actually happen between today's elite and counter elite formations. Well, let's see. How do you counter a color revolution? Yeah, that's a great question. It's not easy.
You understand what the fuck you're talking about.
You really have to stop the political warfare. So you can do a number of things. You can look for where the funding is coming from. This is why color revolutions are so much worse than just like
incoming.
simple protests or riots, even compared to 2020.
Soros incoming.
I think you have to investigate the NGOs and the political and social organizations that are attacking you politically. I think you have to call it out for what it is, which is political and social and economic warfare. You have to go back to grand strategy, John Boyd's grand strategy. And a color revolution movement is trying to disconnect you from as many power centers as possible and connect themselves to as many power centers as possible. So you got to identify those power centers and figuring out where the revolutionary movement is getting its own power from, which is from the people. And ultimately, this is a battle for the people. This is how it's narrative and counter narrative. I mean, as the people go, so does your government. Neil, thanks. Longtime supporter. If you're not subscribed, then do so. This is the Intel spot. Appreciate that. Peter, yes, this also would include all gray zone research stuff. Given the current numerous fault lines at play, understanding that acceleration events are unpredictable.
Okay, I'm done. I'm not going to listen to another 10 minutes of this. I'm done. Guys, if you would like to get actual information about the far left, including, I do put far left stuff online that you can download, but you can also just I can teach you how to find it on your own. If you want real information about the far left that you don't have to pay $200 for, you can head over to my Substack, which is Karlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. If you're new to my work, the place you want to start is to go to the How to Speak Socialist section at the top. And I want you to start here. Now, this is a 4-hour on-demand masterclass. It's a big commitment. But if you really want to understand the far left in a way that guy that we just spent 2 hours watching does not understand the far left, you will watch my How to Speak Socialist presentation. Now, I'm going to be scheduling more live sessions of this. But this is an on-demand recording, but I am going to be really doing a push for this in the new year. I'm going to be scheduling a lot more live sessions. I want to be getting in front of more groups, doing this presentation virtually, teaching people virtually, because quite frankly, by myself, with the help of my wonderful community who I love and adore, we need to counteract all this bullshit and misinformation that's going on online. When I'm teaching you stuff about the far left, you never, ever, ever have to take my word for it. Thank you, Rhino, over on Rumble. Rhino just gave me $2 for stopping that presentation. Let's add that to the tally. Guys, when you learn from me about the far left, you never, ever, ever have to take my word for it, because everything I tell you and everything I show you is backed up by primary source video and audio evidence that you can hear the far left say what they say for yourself. And all I do is I find the evidence, I source the evidence, I break it down, I explain it in plain English. I help people put the pieces together so they can connect the dots, so they can see how the far left operates. This is a 4-hour crash course in which you will watch literally dozens of clips from far left radical trainings that you don't have to take it from me. You hear it directly from them, okay? And it will explain all the major things you need to know about the far left so that you can kind of get an entry-level crash course that will bring you up to speed very, very quickly. This is completely available for free on my website. If you appreciate the work I'm doing, please sign up for a membership, $8 a month, $80 a year, make a one-time gift. You can support my work in a whole bunch of different ways. You can also go back to the homepage, access the Woke 101 section. You can access the Re-Education series, which is a series of articles that I'm working on, explaining and breaking down the far left in really short, succinct ways. I've got 13 articles there so far. I also have a massive archive of just Woke 101 stuff that you can access that explains different concepts about the far left. I have the Actively Unwoke podcast that you can sign up for and listen to. That's completely for free. The Inner Circle podcast is my members only podcast, where I do actually do more analysis of like far left extremist literature. And so that's going to be the premium podcast that people can access for $8 a month, $80 a year. And all of these things, if you head over there, support the work I'm doing, you will learn for free as much about the far left as you want to know. But then if you want to pay me money to help teach this stuff and spread it to more people, that really helps as well, because I'm on my own over here. I don't work for anyone but you. My only job is to show up, tell you the truth, show you the receipts. And if you want to join us for daily live streams, we do Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern time. We do Socialism Saturdays on Saturdays at 6 p.m. And that's all I have for right now, because I'm tired and I've been streaming forever. I've been streaming for 4.5 hours. So I'm going to go and write some content and do some videos and make some clips and stuff like that. And so if you want to support the work I'm doing, head over to the Substack, sign up there. If you want to come back tomorrow at 5 p.m., hey, we'll have beer tomorrow. Guys, tomorrow's Friday. We will have beer tomorrow at 5 p.m. for happy hour, and we will do an exciting stream then. And that's all I have for this round. And so I will bid you guys adieu. Take care, and we will see you hopefully tomorrow at 5 p.m. Mount the like button on the way out the door. Subscribe to the channel if you have not yet subscribed already. And I'm looking for something in my branding stuff that I can't find. And there it is. Okay, bye, guys. Bye, guys. Have a good one. Bye.
How are you feeling? How long have you been here?
3 months, May 17th.
And what brought you here?
That's difficult to answer.
Could you give me some idea?
I am not completely like other people.
What do you mean by that?
People dislike me because I am not completely like them. I am trying to do with my life something which few people try to do. And this influences my thinking and consequently my action.
What is it you're trying to do with your life?
Play the piano for people.
I'm not clear. How is it that playing the piano for people has eventually resulted in your being here in the hospital?
That's difficult to answer.